Hi, everyone. I'm Denise Garth, Chief Strategy Officer at Majesco, and you're listening to the Future of Insurance Industry Leaders podcast series. Follow along as I interview the best and brightest leaders in the insurance industry and insurtech landscape to bring you the latest in digital transformation, innovation, industry trends, challenges, and opportunities, as well as next-gen technologies. We use our experience to anticipate what's next without losing sight of what's now. Stay tuned to find out your next now. Welcome, everybody, to the Future of Insurance podcast series. You guys are in for a treat today. We are going to have Heather Wilson with us, the CEO of CLARA Analytics. I'm going to guarantee that Heather and I are going to have quite the conversation. We always have something to talk about. So welcome, Heather. I'm so excited to have you on our podcast.
Just buckle up, everybody. I can't wait. Let's go.
All right. Well, I always say that, it's a big industry, but it's also a small community. And we think that everybody knows everybody, but I find that everybody doesn't know everybody. So Why don't you talk about your background and your role at CLARA Analytics in our partnership, Heather?
Sure. Thanks so much, Denise. So from a background perspective, for the last 20 plus years, I have been the chief data officer or chief data scientist of a very large Fortune 100 or Fortune 50 company. So I have walked in the shoes of a lot of our customers, both as a buyer as well as trying to build and partner. So I'm the former chief data officer of AIG, Citigroup, Kaiser Permanente, and a self-insured L brands. And I actually really wanted to lead CLARA Analytics because I saw the opportunity around risk and exposure. As the chief data scientist at L Brands, I worked very closely with the chief risk officer and the treasurer, and they were in a TPA engagement model, operating model. And I really wanted to have an opportunity to help the chief risk officers to open up that black box and be able to drive the cases with the TPA, really think about how they wanted to get to the best outcome. When I was the chief data officer at AIG, I tried to build a lot of what CLARA does. And so I saw the importance of partnering with core systems, partnering with, at that time, machine learning and AI was just coming into the forefront. So I really, over the last 20 years, I've seen about every technique in data and analytics, and I'm glad that I'm still in the industry to be a part of it, because you got to be a lifelong learner if you're going to stay in this industry, and you've got to be able to understand where the puck is going. As far as our partnership with Majesco, and then I'll talk about CLARA Analytics as well, we're really aligned. We want the best outcome from when it comes to claims for our clients. That best workflow and that best outcome from a claims perspective is where you get the synergy of Majesco and CLARA together. And we really complement each other. When you look at the system of record is Majesco, and you look at the system of intelligence of CLARA, the two need to work hand in hand. I've always used the analogy that, you always need, with the accounting function of administration, you need the internal audit and the external audit. And that's what intelligence is doing. It's constantly auditing. It's constantly looking at what they can pop up out of the workflow of a core system to bring to an adjuster and a claims professional. So what does CLARA do? Being that system of intelligence, we are an intelligence platform. We are here to optimize claims, and we do that by augmenting the decision and the communication events with insights, alerts, and tools along the value chain of a casualty claim or workers' compensation claim. So really think of us, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, we are the GPS, constantly triaging the case on a daily basis. We're ahead of you. We've seen what's happened in the past. We can predict what's happening in the future, and we give you the routes that you could look at, again, looking at the best optimal outcome for that particular case.
Listening to your background again, I now know why you and I are kindred spirits, having both been inside insurance companies and then kind of coming back into the technology side of it, from a solution provider standpoint. It really brings a different perspective. And, I can remember doing a data and analytics strategy at a couple of different companies I was in, insurance companies that I was at, and it's been a topic for decades, and it has been a long-term strategy. But and it needs to be part of every modern insurance organization. But it's really evolved over the last 10 years, and in particularly in the last probably 3, 4 years. That evolution, I think, is really pushing us finally to really understand the value and really have access to quality data, quite frankly, and how AI fits into this. So talk about how you see that evolution and the value.
It's a great question because I think we're taking the best of the last decade. So if you think about, we have evolved from business intelligence to predictive analytics, and now we've added this generative AI to the arsenal. So we have three utilities here at work. And at Clara, and this is Heather's personal opinion too, the real magic happens when you combine those capabilities and you embed them in the claims workflow. Generative AI can summarize the status of the claim. Predictive AI is telling you where it's headed, and business intelligence gives you the trending and benchmarking to help you understand how you are performing. So when we look at our intelligence platform, it's all three of those together. And that's the beauty of where we are in this industry. So if you haven't jumped into your intelligence platform and you're thinking about what to do now, guess what? You haven't lost out on what's happening, because all three of them are now what really makes CLARA Analytics what we are. But there's something that's really important. So, and this is something that when I was a chief data officer 20 years ago, data quality, data governance, data centralization, data normalization, it's still as important 20 years ago as it is today. And why is that? Because your AI is trained on your data. That means the garbage data, that means inaccurate predictions, okay? Garbage data equals inaccurate predictions, okay? Not a hard algebra equation here we're talking about. So we really help to focus, where can we work with the core systems to make sure that data quality index that we provide back out, the fill rates, looking at the fields, how do we make sure we work in partnership with the core systems on behalf of the self-insured as well as the carrier? So it's a true 180 feedback loop. And that's where, again, it's important for AI platform systems to work with the core system to get this right. And so if you think about AI now, it's giving you a virtual army of data analysts. Let me say that again, a virtual army of data analysts to tell you where you've been, where you are now, and where you're headed across your claim, your entire claim portfolio, and on specific claims.
Yeah, that whole concept of quality data, I think one of the things that you guys are doing, and I know we do as well, it's not just about a single insurer's data, because some of these small insurers don't have enough data to really leverage and be able to train that. It's really having access to a partner who may
Yes.
have a larger contributory database of that data with
Yes.
a better model that's learned it. And I know that's something you guys are focused on as well, Heather.
Yes, thank you for leading the witness here on that, Denise. That's our mode, honestly. And I think on the claims side of it, because everyone's trying to give the best service. Everyone's trying to get the bad actors out of our ecosystem. And what I mean by that is, if you can bring carriers and self-insureds together in a consortium, and models are learning on cases that can benefit everyone, okay? Think about a physician who's been in a position, a specialized physician for 40 years. He or she is taking 40 years of experience of cases and is able to look and diagnose a symptom because they've used the last 40 years of their cognitive load. That's what a machine is doing. A machine is taking the cognitive load of what a human would learn over 40 years of cases and millions of cases and saying, listen, when this case comes in, we've seen this over the last 12 years, and this is the best optimal outcome, from the way to treat the case, the way the case may be litigated, maybe the way the case needs to be settled, or the documents that are on that case. Why wouldn't we do this as an industry and come together as a consortium and help each other and make sure that the cases are getting some of the bad actors out of here, whether it's in a litigation sense, we know they're being financed, or it's some bad actors in a provider network sense. That's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. Claims obviously is the biggest area of expense for insurers, and it really has kind of exploded over the last couple of years with the increased risk and with the increased costs and with inflation and social inflation and everything else. And it's become a really key part, not just the underwriting, but claims itself and the expense. And now we're facing two hurricane events down in the South that are really going to put this to test. As
Yes.
you work with insurers, what are the biggest areas of inefficiencies in claims that AI can address that they can kind of get that first kind of set of, low hanging fruit, and then where they can kind of move from there, that they can really make an impact on the business fundamentals of claims, Heather?
I'm with you, Denise. And, our prayers and thoughts with everybody for the hurricane. And secondly, before I go into some scenarios and use cases of how we think about applying AI predictive analytics to the inefficiencies, those inefficiencies are not allowing an adjuster who has a caseload of 100 to 200 or maybe even more. They want to be able to provide empathy in servicing a claim, which means giving empathy to an adjuster or a claimant on the other side. So to give empathy, we have to give empathy to an adjuster. And what does that mean? That means giving them the data, the analytics, giving them a heads up at their fingertips, okay? And so there's a couple of ways that we do this. One is claim reassignment. It's a real productivity killer, okay? People think it's so easy with segmentation, but predicting the claim outcome, assigning the right adjuster is the first step to prevent this. And we've reduced claim reassignment by 85% for some of our largest customers by just using these models at FNOL. It's a real productivity killer. The other aspect that we have a lot of empathy is about, we know that claims reviews are a central part of the claims process, but they are a time consumer and they're tedious to prepare for. We know a claims adjuster at any point can have leadership on insured ask for review. You have to go quickly, prepare the what, the where, the when, the why, and you've got to have that at your fingertips. So this requires an adjuster to have a complete review, summarize the claim, all the supporting documentation. It takes hours to prepare and to prep, and it requires the adjuster to focus and drop all other activities during that time. We believe AI can help to accelerate it. It takes the cognitive load off of the adjuster and it helps them prepare for this claim review, and it helps them to drive to settlement. So again, when you have the business intelligence, when you have the predictive analytics, when you have the propensity models, you're able to provide all of this and package it up with GenAI and summarize it. We kind of call it the cliff notes. And we'll talk about this later as a GenAI. How do you give them the cliff notes? They haven't looked at the claim to do the review in maybe months. How do you provide that at a fingertip for them? I think the third area is really, how do you take the surprise out of a sleeper claim? And that's something else that we do, right? And you do that by using a utility that we call unstructured data utility. And that's through using all these amazing notes that the adjusters are taking that come in on these claims notes. And that's picking up sentiment. And you know that being able to, when this giant's being woken up, right, out of this sleeper claim, to be in front of that and catch it is just another nice efficiency we bring to the adjuster.
I love that sleeper claim. I love that concept.
Right?
And I loved your concept of the cliff note. When you work with other core systems like Majesco
Yeah.
to leverage the data into the models, what are the best practices and what's needed to really have that partnership be effective and to have it smooth? And what are the cliff notes there, Heather?
It's great. So one of the things when we're onboarding, and we onboard 6 to 8 weeks, it's a true partnership where that data is residing. So the data is residing with Majesco. So Majesco and CLARA have a partnership where we say, on behalf of this particular client, be it a carrier or a self-insured, or it could be an MGA, we need to come together and we need to make sure that we have the great fill rates and a great data quality index so that these models will work on behalf of the client. So that means a true feedback loop between CLARA and Majesco on behalf of the client. And we provide a data quality index back to Majesco and say, on behalf of this client, this is where we see these particular fields or this particular fill rate. Can we work together to make this at a particular percentage? So that's one thing, because when we ask for that 5 years of closed claims data so that we can benchmark and understand how that carrier self-insured, has treated those cases and treated that claim shop, we need to be able to benchmark and baseline. So that's one opportunity that we work with Majesco. I think the other area we work on is just integration. Yes, we can work outside the core system, but come on, everybody. We want the system of intelligence and the system of record to be together in one core system. This integration into the workflow, it's key. It's an inefficiency right now where you've got this amazing AI intelligence platform that's providing the signals, providing the routes, being the GPS every day. Then you have this great core system that's providing the administration and also giving, some wonderful intelligence on its own, but you got to bring them together and you got to bring it into that claims workflow. And that's, again, the partnership that we bring for this ecosystem that we live in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's really why we've really focused in on this whole embedded data and analytics, because it can't be a separate point solution, whether it's things that we're doing by putting BI tools embedded into the workflow or our GenAI, but it's also working with our partners like you guys to make sure that we're making those systems as intelligent as possible and continue to raise the intelligence levels to actually help insurers do things the right way.
That's right.
So let's turn to the hottest topic in the industry, GenAI. This is much more than a technology, because when you really think about it, I get so excited, Heather, having been in this industry for a long period of time. It has the opportunity to really change and drive a level of operational optimization that we haven't seen probably since the 60s or 70s when we first started automating. Do that, we've got to change the business operating model and the processes for insurance. What do you see as the potential of GenAI, and what are you guys focused on?
We've welcomed the conversation that really hit the mass market over probably a year and a half ago, because I really think it brought everything to a focus area. I think one of the fun parts of being in a mature startup like CLARA is that we can go. And we can go with accuracy, we can go with integrity, and we know how to build GenAI models. And so we focus where the adjuster, the claims handler, needs the most help. And so I was talking about Cliff Notes earlier in the podcast. I think about myself whenever, you walk into an emergency room and the physician has 30 cases. Where do I go first, right? I need some notes on this particular patient. I use that analogy with an adjuster. The adjuster, right, we shifted the paradigm. We have them come in every day focused on those particular cases that need their decision, where they need their cognitive thinking. And so what we know is if they haven't gone into the case, we provide them that Cliff Notes. Okay, here is the high level, what has happened in this particular case that you haven't maybe looked at 6 months, 3 months, whatever number of days, but it's telling you to take an action on the case. Here's a summary of the case. Here are the associated documents from the last 90 days with the case, and even the summarization on top of those cases, and those documents are also in there. So we're bringing the Cliff Notes and the claim summarization. So that's number one. I think number two, we build AI based on watching the workflow of an adjuster. Where can we apply efficiency in that workflow where we know there's a decision point that needs to help? And one of those is the amount of documents that come in on those cases. So, we would know with workers' comp cases, they don't come in 1, 2, 3, 4, right? They come in 2, 4, 5, 10. And so, those time series, putting that together. We know that in casualty cases, there's a lot of heavy legal demand packages. There's a lot of intense medical documentation in there as well. How do we surface this important insights and alerts inside of these documents to the adjuster, but not just have it as a utility on its own around documents? What's important, what we do is we take those documents and then we enrich the case with the documents and the insights. So it's important that, CLARA's an end-to-end claims AI system. We're not just providing document, intelligence and processing and insights and sorting and indexing out here on its own in left field. It comes back together to the case and it enriches the case so that we're not looking at a left hand and a right hand, okay? They're working together. I think the last thing that we really do well is we have analytical products and data utilities that hang off of our platform. And one of those is an unstructured data utility. So I talked about the utility of intelligence on documents, but we have an unstructured data utility, and that's looking at all of these notes that are coming in. You talk about a gold mine. That's where you get sentiment. That's where you piece together
Yeah.
even pieces in the structured fields that aren't ticking and tying for us. We can put together a true story because of our unstructured data utility of what's happening in those notes and really unlock the valuable information for those notes and other unstructured sources. So that's where we think we're putting really good Gen AI methods to utilization.
There's so much possibility and so much potential, and we're just barely even touching the opportunity yet because the rapid pace of development of this technology is just so much amazing. And the level of capabilities is changing so rapidly. I mean, in just 5, 6 months since our last product release, it's shocking what Gen AI is doing and the possibilities that we have.
I agree. I agree. That's why we all have to work together to help each other.
Exactly. So, one of the interesting things that you have always talked about, Heather, that I want you to kind of go into an explanation is augmented intelligence experience. What do you mean by that, and how is that different than how we've used analytics in the past?
Sure. I really use an analogy of the GPS. So I think about whether you know the route that you have driven over a number of years or you're going to a new destination. I know even when I'm driving the same route, I still turn on my GPS. Why am I turning on my GPS? Because there are things ahead in my route. So there's traffic ahead, there's construction ahead, there's a speed bump ahead, there's a cop ahead. Okay. And so it's telling me things that could happen, and it's also giving me other routes. So if I'm going to a place that I haven't been to, it gives me three routes when I put in the coordinates. And one could be the fastest, one could be, this is tolls, and one could be the scenic review. And so when I think about that, that's what we provide the adjuster. Okay. The adjuster is driving the case, and we want the adjuster, the experience that they have had with their cognitive learning, but we want to take some of that cognitive load off, and we want to be ahead of them in the case and say, good morning, you've logged into CLARA, and these are things that we think could happen to this case. And can you intervene in this case? So the propensity or something is actually happening or could happen for the GPS. And that's how we like to think about working every day, side by side, we're the GPS with the adjuster, always looking at the case. I think we have never had the opportunity to have such a complete view of a claim as we're standing right now in our insurance industry. The combination of traditional business intelligence with predictive analytics and now generative AI capabilities gets us beyond just a historical or point in time insight. We now know where a claim has been, how it compares to millions of other casualty claims, and where it's headed. That's a GPS system. That's GPS is learning from many other drivers out there driving routes, and that's what we do with our back-end data of cases.
I love that analogy. It's really powerful. Let's shift to thinking about the future. Where's AI and Gen AI going? Where will it be in the next 3 to 5 years? And what excites you?
I think our platform is on an evolutionary path to ultimately become a digital adjuster that works as a trusted member of the claims organization, not replacing the human. Like I just said, we need that adjuster driving that case, just like you're driving your car. But we need to eliminate some of the cognitive intensive tasks that make modern work a drudgery. And we want them to be productive. We want them to be happy at being adjusters and provide the empathy. So that's opening up human cognitive load to focus on things that require EQ, like I just talked about, and other forms of intelligence that are difficult to replace. We're going to continue to see the right governance put in place to protect consumers and the users of AI. And obviously, we all make sure we have those guardrails in place around our AI models, whether it's testing for bias, not using particular fields, also making sure we stay non-prescriptive. That's the GPS. Here's all the different routes you choose as the driver. But we think that AI is going to be applied at all the decision points and communication efforts and will become as ubiquitous as internet searches and mobile applications. That's where we're going, Denise.
Well, and I think it's so critically important because as we are facing a crisis of retirements in this industry and
Yes,
trying to attract a new generation into this industry, they're going to expect to not have that drudgery.
yes,
They're going to
exactly.
expect to be able to use technology. And so
Exactly.
this is so crucial over the next 5 to 10 years to be able to really embrace this.
Exactly. Couldn't agree with you more.
So I always like to end my podcast with the same question. It's a lot of fun because we really have had very few similar comments. There may have been variations, but if you could use one word or phrase to describe the future of insurance, what would it be and why?
I really, really have thought about your question, Denise, and pondered it for a while because I think it's really important. And it's really taking the last question that you talked about, and especially your comment about the next generation and this workforce. And so I'm landing on the word embedded, but not in the current sense of embedded insurance that deals with distribution through a purchase process. We will have data and AI agents working alongside us, identifying risk, exposure, helping us to optimize outcomes in most of our daily personal and work activities. Insurance will have to evolve to be a part of that process and be embedded intelligence, embedded data and analytics, embedded communication. This means new products, new experiences, and I believe ultimately it's going to drive better outcomes for all of us. So I'm using embedded in a different sense here.
Those better outcomes are really needed, not just for the insurance companies, but for our customers, because we can't keep raising prices 20, 30, 40%.
That's
and
right.
have a growing protection gap. We got to find a way to do things better, more effectively, and more precisely to really help our customers out there in the market.
That's right. So let's go, Denise.
All right. Well, as always, it's always a great conversation with you, Heather. It's been such a pleasure having this today, and I am looking forward to people listening to it. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you, Denise.
That's it for this week's episode of Future of Insurance Industry Leaders podcast. Subscribe to our market-leading podcast series available wherever you get your podcast from. Thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in the next time.